The happiest day of my life began with the sound of church bells. I stood in front of a tall mirror, adjusting my black tie for what felt like the 10th time. Daniel leaned against the door and laughed. "You've fixed that tie more times than I've checked my phone. I just want everything to be perfect." He grinned. "It already is." I smiled at my reflection. I've waited 4 years for today. And in 30 minutes, Chloe Bennett becomes Chloe Parker. Hearing those words made my heart race. I still can't believe it's finally happening. Daniel walked over and straightened my jacket. "You nervous?" "A little." "Cold feet." "Not even close." He laughed. I had to ask. Someone knocked softly. My mother stepped inside with tears already filling her eyes. "There you are." "Mom." She hugged me tightly. "You look just like your father did on our wedding day." "I hope that's a good thing." "It is." She smiled through her tears. "He would have been so proud of you today." I swallowed hard. "I wish he were here." "He is." She gently touched my chest. "Right here." For a second, I couldn't speak. Then she smiled again. "I'll let you boys finish getting ready. I'll see you out there." "You certainly will." She left the room, closing the door quietly behind her. Daniel looked at me. "You okay?" "Yeah." "You sure?" "I just miss him. He'd be smiling today." "I know." Daniel checked his watch. 25 minutes. I took a deep breath. "Let's do this." We walked into the church hallway. Everything looked beautiful. White roses lined both sides of the aisle. Golden candles flickered beneath the stained glass windows. Friends and family laughed as they found their seats. Children chased each other near the entrance until their parents called them back. I smiled. This is exactly how Chloe imagined it. Daniel nodded. She planned every little detail. I remember. A photographer adjusted her camera near the altar. Musicians quietly tuned their instruments. Everything was ready. Everything except the bride. Sarah Bennett hurried through the hallway. She forced a smile when she saw me. "Ethan." "Hey. You look handsome." "Thanks." "You ready?" "I've never been more ready." She hugged me quickly, but something felt strange. Her smile disappeared almost as soon as it appeared. Before I could ask why, her phone vibrated. She looked down. Her expression changed instantly. "What is it?" "Nothing." "Sarah?" "It's probably nothing." She stepped away and answered the call in a whisper. I couldn't hear the conversation. I only saw her face growing paler. She ended the call and stood perfectly still. My stomach tightened. Daniel noticed too. "Sarah?" She looked toward us, but didn't move. "Can we talk?" "Of course." She slowly walked into the groom's room and closed the door behind us. The room suddenly felt much smaller. "What's wrong?" She looked down at her phone. "I don't know if I should show you." "Show me what?" "Ethan." "Sarah." She took a shaky breath. "I received this a minute ago." She handed me the phone. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then everything inside me stopped. The picture showed Chloe. She was standing outside a luxury hotel. Ryan Collins stood in front of her. His arms were wrapped around her. Her hands rested against his chest. They weren't arguing. They weren't saying goodbye. They looked comfortable. I stared at the screen. I never imagined that the quietest sound in my life would be people leaving without saying goodbye. One by one, the wedding guests walked out of the church. Some looked at me with pity. Others avoided looking at me at all. The flowers still covered the altar. The music had stopped. The empty chairs somehow hurt more than the whispers. Daniel stood beside me. "You don't have to stay here." "I know. We can leave." I looked toward the church doors. I thought I'd be leaving with my wife. He sighed. "I'm sorry." "So am I." Sarah slowly approached us. Her eyes were red. I tried calling Chloe again. I didn't ask what happened. I couldn't reach her. I figured. She lowered her head. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. This isn't your fault. I should have stopped her weeks ago. You didn't make her choices." Tears rolled down her face. I kept hoping she'd come to her senses. I did too. Pastor William joined us. "I'm deeply sorry for what happened today." I managed a weak smile. "You have nothing to apologize for." I wish there were better words. "There aren't." The pastor nodded sadly. "I'll ask the staff to begin clearing the decorations." I looked around the church. "No." He looked surprised. "Leave them. For now. Just for a little while." He quietly agreed. Daniel touched my shoulder. "Come on. I don't know where to go. Anywhere except here." I laughed bitterly. I spent months planning today. "I know." And it ended before it even started. As we walked toward the entrance, I noticed someone kneeling near the front pews. A young woman in a simple white blouse carefully packed expensive camera equipment into a large black case. She looked exhausted. She wiped her eyes before she noticed us. Oh. She quickly stood. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I didn't realize anyone was still here. Daniel whispered, she's the photographer. The woman gave a small nod. Emily Carter. I forced a polite smile. Ethan Parker. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then Emily looked around the empty church and gave a tired laugh. I guess today wasn't kind to either of us. I frowned. What do you mean? She rested the camera bag against a pew. I wasn't photographing your wedding. You weren't. No. She pointed toward another chapel connected to the same church. I was covering another ceremony this morning. I blinked. There was another wedding? She nodded. It was supposed to start an hour before yours. What happened? She smiled sadly. The bride found out her fiancé disappeared. Daniel looked confused. Disappeared? Emily nodded again. With another woman. Silence filled the room. Finally, I said the only thing that came to mind. You're kidding. I wish I were. She folded her arms. I've photographed more than 100 weddings. And today? She laughed softly. Today fate decided to cancel 2 of them. Even I couldn't stop a small smile. That's not funny. No. She smiled back. But if I don't laugh, I'll probably cry. I understood exactly what she meant. So the bride never came? She left after finding the truth. I slowly nodded. My bride never arrived either. Emily looked at me carefully. I heard. You did. Church walls aren't very good at keeping secrets. I looked away. I suppose not. She hesitated before asking. Are you okay? I almost answered automatically. I'm fine. Instead, I shook my head. No. Good. I looked back at her. Good. You don't have to pretend with me. She lifted her camera. I've spent years photographing smiles. And I've learned the difference between real ones and painful ones. For the first time that day, I felt like someone truly understood what I couldn't explain. I wasn't grieving a canceled ceremony. I was grieving the future I thought already belonged to me. Emily quietly sat on the front pew. If it helps. I'm listening. I don't think today defines the rest of your life. I let out a slow breath. It certainly feels like it does. She smiled gently. I thought the same thing an hour ago. And now, I'm still here. So am I. Maybe that's enough for today. Before I could answer, Pastor William walked back toward us. He looked at both of us for a long moment. Then he said something none of us expected. I may have an unusual idea. Daniel raised an eyebrow. What kind of idea? The pastor smiled gently. One that has nothing to do with romance, and everything to do with dignity. Emily and I exchanged confused glances. Neither of us had any idea that the next few minutes would change both of our lives forever. I never expected to stand at the front of the church twice on the same day. An hour earlier, I had been waiting for Chloe. Now I stood beside Pastor William with no idea what my future looked like. Emily remained a few steps away, holding her camera bag against her side. Daniel leaned toward me. You don't have to do anything. I know. This is your decision. I know. Pastor William folded his hands. I want both of you to understand something. Emily looked at him. We're listening. This isn't about replacing anyone. I nodded. I understand. It's about refusing to let betrayal become the final chapter of today. The church had become strangely quiet. Most of the guests had already left, but my parents, Daniel, Sarah, and a handful of relatives remained. No one spoke. Everyone waited. Emily broke the silence. I still can't believe we're even discussing this. I managed a tired smile. Neither can I. She laughed softly. If someone told me this morning I'd be standing here, I'd have called them crazy. I would have agreed. Pastor William smiled. Sometimes life writes stories we would never dare imagine. Daniel crossed his arms. Ethan, tell us honestly. What? What are you feeling? I looked around the sanctuary. The truth. The truth. I don't know. I let out a slow breath. I feel embarrassed. I know. I feel angry. Daniel nodded. I know. And somehow, I glanced toward Emily. I don't want today to be remembered only because someone abandoned me. Emily lowered her eyes. I understand that. She took a careful step forward. My fiancé didn't just leave me. I looked at her. He sent a text. My eyebrows lifted. A text? She nodded. 5 minutes before the ceremony. I'm sorry. He said he wasn't ready. She gave a bitter smile. Apparently, he became ready enough to leave with someone else. The room fell silent again. I quietly said, I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I know. She looked directly at me. But thank you. Pastor William cleared his throat. I have a question. Everyone turned toward him. If two innocent people walk out of this church today believing they were defined by someone else's betrayal. He paused. Who truly wins? No one answered. He continued. I am not suggesting romance. Emily looked confused. Then what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting hope. Daniel frowned. Hope? Yes. The pastor smiled gently. Leave this church together. Emily blinked. As friends. If that's all you wish. He looked at both of us. But don't leave as victims. I felt something inside me begin to change. Not love. Not excitement. Just peace. Before I could speak, the church doors suddenly opened. A young usher hurried inside, breathing heavily. Ethan. I turned. What happened? He pointed toward the entrance. She's here. My heart skipped. Who? Chloe. The room became completely still. Sarah closed her eyes. Oh no. Daniel muttered. Too late. The usher continued. She just pulled into the parking lot. I frowned. Is she alone? He nodded. Crying. Sarah whispered. Ryan left her. Daniel looked at me. What do you want to do? I stood silently. For months I had imagined what I would say if Chloe ever betrayed me. Now I couldn't think of a single word. Pastor William gently placed a hand on my shoulder. You don't owe anyone a decision made from guilt. I looked at Emily. She quietly asked, What do you want? I answered honestly. I want one day in my life that isn't controlled by someone else's choices. Emily slowly nodded. So do I. The pastor smiled. Then perhaps you already know your answer. I looked at Emily. She looked back at me. Neither of us smiled. Neither of us pretended this was a love story. It wasn't. It was two broken people refusing to let betrayal write the ending for them. I quietly held out my hand. I'm Ethan. She looked at my hand for a moment before taking it. I'm Emily. Pastor William opened the small ceremony book. Shall we begin? Before either of us could answer, I heard hurried footsteps echo through the church hallway. A voice I knew better than my own called my name. Ethan. Chloe. She sounded terrified. The morning after my unexpected wedding felt strangely peaceful. Not because my life suddenly made sense. Because, for the first time in weeks, I wasn't pretending everything was okay. Emily stood in the kitchen of the small apartment the church had arranged for us overnight. She held 2 mugs of coffee. I guessed you drink yours black. I smiled. You guessed right. She handed me one. I've never been good at guessing. I think you're doing fine. She laughed softly. I married a stranger yesterday. So did I. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. Finally, I broke the silence. We should probably talk. I was hoping you'd say that. We sat across from each other at the small dining table. Neither of us seemed nervous. Only honest. Emily folded her hands around her mug. I don't want to pretend this is some great romance. I don't either. I respect you. I respect you too. But we don't know each other. I nodded. Not yet. She smiled. So what happens now? I leaned back in my chair. We slowed down. I like that answer. We don't force anything. Agreed. If friendship is all this ever becomes. She interrupted gently. Then we'll still have treated each other better than the people who left us. I couldn't help smiling. I think that's a pretty good beginning. She raised her coffee. Till honesty. I lifted mine. Till honesty. The mugs touched softly. It wasn't a romantic moment. It was something quieter. Something stronger. Trust. My phone buzzed. 1 message. Then another. Then 5 more. Emily looked at the screen. You don't have to answer. I wasn't planning to. The caller's name appeared. Chloe. I turned the phone over without reading anything. Emily didn't ask questions. Instead, she quietly said, Thank you. For what? For not bringing yesterday into today. I don't want to live there anymore. She smiled. Neither do I. Another knock interrupted us. Daniel walked inside carrying 2 paper bags. I brought breakfast. You always know when food is needed. I also know when my best friend forgets to eat. Emily stood. Good morning. Daniel smiled warmly. How are you doing? She answered honestly. Confused. He laughed. That's probably the healthiest answer anyone has given since yesterday. I nodded. I agree. Daniel placed breakfast on the table. I've already spoken with Michael. I looked up. My old boss. He heard what happened. I frowned. Already. The whole city probably has. I sighed. Wonderful. He wants to meet you. Why? Daniel smiled. He said talented architects shouldn't disappear because someone else made a terrible decision. I stared at him. He really said that? He did. Before I could answer, Emily quietly spoke. You should go. What about you? I'll be all right. I don't want to leave you alone. She smiled gently. You aren't leaving me. She looked around the apartment. You're rebuilding yourself. And you? I'm rebuilding too. What will you do? She picked up her camera. I haven't touched this since yesterday. I smiled. You should. I think I will. She looked down at the camera before meeting my eyes again. I became a photographer because I wanted to capture happy memories. You still can. She nodded. Maybe I'll start with creating new ones. Daniel looked between us. You two are handling this surprisingly well. Emily laughed. We agreed on one rule. Daniel looked curious. What rule? I answered first. No lies. Emily nodded. No pretending. No rushing. And no promises we aren't ready to make. Daniel smiled. I wish more marriages started that way. Before anyone could say another word, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Chloe. Then another. Then another. I quietly silenced the phone. Emily didn't ask what they said. She simply looked at me. You don't owe anyone an answer before you're ready. For the first time since everything fell apart, I realized something important. A marriage doesn't begin with saying, I do. Sometimes. It begins with two people choosing honesty when lying would have been much easier. Almost a year had passed since the strangest wedding anyone in our families had ever witnessed. Some mornings I still woke up expecting everything to have been a dream. Then I would see Emily standing in the kitchen, humming softly while editing photographs on her laptop. She looked up and smiled. You're awake. I smell pancakes. I figured today's meeting deserved a proper breakfast. I laughed. You remember everything. I remember what matters. I walked over and kissed her forehead without thinking. The simple gesture surprised both of us. She smiled. I think we're finally acting like a married couple. I think you're right. She slid a plate toward me. Big day. Huge. Michael announces the lead architect this morning. She tilted her head. You already know who it is, don't you? I have a feeling. I have more than a feeling. I raised an eyebrow. You've been hiding something. She laughed. I promised Michael I wouldn't spoil the surprise. So you know? I might. I shook my head. That's unfair. She grinned. I learned from photographers. What does that mean? We never reveal the ending before the picture develops. I pointed my fork at her. That was terrible. I know. But you smiled. I did. Before I could finish breakfast, my phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen. I answered immediately. Good morning. Ethan, are you on your way? Almost. Good. His voice sounded unusually excited. Don't be late. I won't. We've got something worth celebrating. I'll be there in 20 minutes. We'll be waiting. The call ended. Emily handed me my jacket. You've got this. What if I don't? She stepped closer. Then you'll come home. We'll order pizza. And tomorrow you'll try again. I smiled. You always make failures sound manageable. That's because it is. I looked into her eyes. When did you become this wise? The day I stopped trying to control things I couldn't change. Her words stayed with me all the way to the office. An hour later, every department gathered in the conference room. Michael stood at the front with a stack of blueprints. He smiled when he saw me. Good. Everyone's here. The room became quiet. Michael looked around before speaking. Our company has officially won the Harbor Point redevelopment project. Applause filled the room. He continued. This will be the largest project we've ever completed. I exchanged a quick glance with Daniel, who had come to review the legal contracts. He gave me a subtle thumbs up. Michael cleared his throat again. Projects like this require more than talent. He paused. They require character. My heartbeat quickened. He looked directly at me. Ethan. Yes, sir. I'd like you to lead the entire project. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Me? You? The room erupted into applause again. I slowly stood. Thank you. You earned it. I'll do everything I can. Michael smiled. I know you will. That evening, I rushed home carrying a bottle of sparkling cider. Emily opened the door before I could knock. She took one look at my face and laughed. You got it. I got it. She wrapped her arms around me. I knew you would. I held her tightly. No. I smiled. We got it. She looked confused. What do you mean? I couldn't have rebuilt my life without you. Her eyes softened. And I couldn't have rebuilt mine without you. For the first time in a long while, success didn't feel lonely. It felt more than a year had passed since the day my life changed inside a church. The memories no longer hurt the way they once did. They simply reminded me how far I had come. I was reviewing blueprints when my assistant knocked on the office door. Mr. Parker? You can come in. She stepped inside with an uncertain expression. Someone is asking to see you. Do I have an appointment? No. Who is it? She hesitated. It's Chloe Bennett. I looked at the closed folder on my desk before answering. Please send her in. A few moments later, Chloe walked into my office. She looked thinner than I remembered. The confidence she once carried into every room had quietly disappeared. She held a small velvet box tightly in both hands. Hi, Ethan. Hello, Chloe. She glanced around my office. You've done well. I've been fortunate. I heard you led the Harbor Point project. I did. I'm happy for you. Thank you. Silence settled between us. Finally, she stepped closer and placed the velvet box on my desk. I've carried this with me every day. I looked down. The engagement ring rested inside. It looked exactly the way it had on the day I slipped it onto her finger. I never wore it. I know. You knew? You returned it unopened through Daniel. She nodded slowly. I couldn't throw it away. You don't have to. She looked at me with eyes full of regret. I've asked myself one question every single day. I waited quietly. Her voice broke. Why didn't you wait for me? I held her gaze. I did. She frowned. No. I did. You married Emily. I waited long before that. Tears filled her eyes. I don't understand. I leaned back in my chair. Do you remember the months before our wedding? She whispered. Yes. I kept asking if something was wrong. You did. I asked if you still wanted to marry me. You did. I asked if Ryan was back in your life. Her shoulders dropped. You did. And every time. I paused. You told me everything was fine. She wiped away a tear. I thought I could fix it. I was giving you the chance to. I know. I wasn't asking for perfection. I know. I was asking for honesty. She covered her face. I was scared. I know. I thought I could figure out my feelings before the wedding. And instead, I ran from them. A knock interrupted us. Daniel stepped into the office carrying a contract. I didn't realize you had company. It's all right. He immediately recognized Chloe. Hello. Hi, Daniel. He set the folder on my desk. I can come back later. Chloe shook her head. No. She looked at him with tearful eyes. I need you to answer something honestly. Daniel nodded. I will. She took a deep breath. Did Ethan really wait for me? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled out a chair and sat down. I watched Ethan every day before the wedding. Chloe lowered her eyes. He wasn't angry. He wasn't. No. Daniel's voice remained calm. He was confused. I know. He kept asking me what he had done wrong. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. He wanted an explanation. I never gave him one. You didn't. Daniel looked directly at her. He spent hours hoping you'd walk through those church doors before making any decision. I didn't know. He wanted you to choose him honestly. The office became quiet. Just then my phone rang. The caller ID read Sarah. I answered. Hi. Ethan, you're on speaker. There was a brief pause. So Chloe can hear me? Yes. Sarah's voice softened. Chloe, I'm here. I begged you not to leave that morning. I remember. I told you uncertainty destroys love faster than distance ever could. You did. I asked you to go to Ethan and tell him the truth. I was afraid. You weren't afraid of losing Ethan. Sarah sighed. You were afraid of making a decision. Chloe closed her eyes. And that fear cost me everything. No one argued with her. Because for the first time, 2 years. That was how long it had been since the day everyone thought my life had fallen apart. Instead, it had quietly begun again. Emily squeezed my hand as we walked toward the old stone church. You've been quiet. I've been thinking. Dangerous. I laughed. You've started stealing Daniel's jokes. I've had 2 years to practice. The morning sun painted golden light across the stained glass windows. Everything looked almost exactly the same. The same wooden doors. The same white steps. The same peaceful silence. Emily looked up at the church and smiled. Hard to believe this is where we met. I know. If someone had told me I'd celebrate my 2nd wedding anniversary here, you would have laughed. I definitely would have. So would I. She gently leaned against my shoulder. Any regrets? I looked at her without hesitation. Not one. She smiled. Good answer. It's the honest one. We stepped inside the church together. Pastor William stood near the front, arranging flowers for another ceremony. He looked up and immediately recognized us. Ethan, Pastor, and Emily. It's good to see you again. He walked toward us with a warm smile. I've been hoping you'd come back someday. Emily laughed. We finally kept our promise. You certainly did. The pastor looked around the empty sanctuary. Do you remember how quiet it became that afternoon? I remember every second. And now, I looked around the same room. Now it feels peaceful. It does. Pastor William smiled. I've performed hundreds of weddings. He paused. But yours is the one people still ask me about. Emily raised an eyebrow. Really? They ask whether it was planned. I laughed. It definitely wasn't. They ask whether the marriage lasted. Emily slipped her hand into mine. I think we've answered that. The pastor chuckled. You certainly have. After he excused himself to greet another couple, Emily and I sat in the same front pew where we had spoken for the first time. She looked at me. What are you thinking now? I took a slow breath. I used to believe fate ruined my wedding day. And now, I think it quietly redirected my life. Emily didn't answer immediately. Instead, she rested her head against my shoulder. I'm glad it did. So am I. She looked at our joined hands. Do you ever think about Chloe? I answered honestly. Sometimes. With anger? No. With sadness? Not anymore. Then what? I hope she's found peace. Emily nodded. Sarah told me she's doing better. I heard. She moved away. I know. She finally stopped blaming everyone except herself. I smiled gently. That must have been difficult. Emily squeezed my hand. But necessary. I nodded. It was. She looked out through the stained glass windows. And Ryan? I shrugged. I heard he repeated the same pattern with someone else. She sighed. Some people never learn. Some never want to. Silence settled comfortably between us. It wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that only exists between two people who completely trust each other. Emily smiled. Can I ask you one more question? Always. If Chloe had arrived 5 minutes earlier that day. She paused. What do you think would have happened? I looked around the church one last time. Then I looked back at the woman holding my hand. I honestly don't know. She nodded. But I do know this. What? I wouldn't trade the life we've built for any version of the past. A tear appeared in her eye. Neither would I. I smiled. People always asked the same question after our wedding. They did. They wanted to know who the woman was that I married. Emily laughed softly. And I intertwined my fingers with hers. She was never a backup.